So, the Indian Constitution is the cornerstone of our democracy, embodying the vision of a free and just India. Its journey spans nearly a century of evolution, shaped by significant events, reforms, and sacrifices. Let's explore the historical backgrounds from 1857 to 1952 and how it paved the way for this monumental document. So, after the revolt of 1857, British people were alarmed by the intensity of Indian resistance and feared losing their control over India. To address this, they introduced the Government of India Act 1958, which marked the transfer of power from East India Company to the British Crown. This move was presented as a gesture of sympathy towards Indians, but it was primarily aimed at strengthening their control and preventing future uprisings. Government of India Act of 1858, which was also known as Act of Good Government, because the governor generals who were ruling before this act were all bad and they were not maintaining properly. That's why this was called as Act of Good Government. Governor General of India, this role was removed, and then they introduced Viceroy of India, and the first Viceroy was Lord Canning. In August 2, 1858, Government Act 1858 was passed and East India Company was abolished. All its power were transferred to British Crown. That means company rule ended and then the Crown rule started. It created a new role called as Secretary of State, which means SOS, and the first secretary here was Lord Stanley. So these two people are very important in the like Government of India Act of 1858. And then to move on with the Indian Council Act of 1861, this was enacted in 1861, and in order to be able to associate with Indians with the lawmaking and also involve them in legislative wing, they nominated some Indians as non-officials. That means the Viceroy had to nominate some Indians as non-officials, and they nominated three members: Raja of Banaras, Maharaja of Patiala, and Sir Dinkar Rao. These three people were nominated and as non-officials only. And the major thing that they did this time was decentralizing the legislative powers of Governor General and then vested them in Government of Bombay and Madras. In simple words, the Indian Councils Act of 1861 decentralized legislative powers by allowing the Governor General to restore the lawmaking authority to the governments of Bombay and Madras. This meant these provinces could make laws on certain local matters, giving them more autonomy in the governance. And then the Bengal Northwestern Frontier Province was also introduced. It gave recognition to the portfolio system as well. So to move on to Indian Council Act of 1892, the pressure of Indian National Congress, which came into game in 1885, the size of Legislative Council was increased from 10 to 16 and empowered the Legislative Council with the power of discussing budget, power of addressing questions to the executive. Non-official members of Indian Legislative Council were nominated by Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Provincial Legislative Councils. Non-official members of Provincial Legislative Council were nominated by local bodies such as universities, zamindars, and municipalities, etc. The next act was Indian Council Act of 1909. It was also known as Morley and Minto reforms, in which Morley was the Secretary of State and Minto was the Viceroy. And here they increased the size of Legislative Council from 16 to 60. And the first Indian who became the Viceroy, to join the Viceroy Executive Council was Satyendra Prasad Sinha. He is a very important man, and he was the first Indian to join the Viceroy Executive Council. All India Muslim League was also there, in which Jinnah was its leader, and it provided association of Indians with Executive Council of Viceroy and Governors. It also provided the separate representation of presidency, corporations, chamber of commerce, universities, and zamindars. The main thing happened between this development was Bengal partition and All India Muslim League, increasing the size of Legislative Council and providing the association of Indians with Executive Council of Viceroy and Governors. Government of India Act 1999, Montagu and Chelmsford reforms, in which the Secretary of State was Montagu, Chelmsford was a viceroy, and in this time British became really weak because World War One came to an end. Battle was won by Britishers actually. Britishers became weak. Mahatma Gandhi came from South Africa, and then Congress raised demand of provincial autonomy, division of power, as well as bicameralism, which means upper house and lower house. And they created a new office of High Commissioner for India in London, established Central Public Service Commission in 1926, and Act also provided voting rights to women. It also separated the provincial budget from the central budget. The most important thing about this act is diarchy, as it was a dual governance scheme. It was introduced in the provincial subjects. It was divided into reserved and transferred. Under the reserved there was agriculture, health, education, supervision of local government, and then in the transferred there was communications, foreign affairs, and then defense. And the transferred list was administered by the Governor General, with whom the ministers responsible to Legislative Council. The reserved list, which included all these things, was administered by Governor with the Executive Council of Ministers, which were not responsible to Legislative Council. Governor was empowered to reserve a bill for the consideration of the Governor General if it was related to some specified matters only. And in November 1927, Simon Commission was introduced. So that's all about the developments between 1857 to 1952, and this is the Simon Commission thing, in which there are a lot of things and developments that have happened. Thank you.